Alright, welcome back everybody. I have made the decision to move along with Redactor as opposed to TinyMCE. And I will note again that there is absolutely nothing wrong with TinyMCE. However, like I said when working on that last video a couple months ago or more, I noticed that there was just going to be too much explanation that was going to derail us from the main point of this whole series in regards to JavaScript and jQuery and all that, which we'll get into some other day in another series. But for this, we're talking about dynamic websites using PHP, MySQL databases, etc. So with that said, we're going with Redactor. It is not necessarily a free product, but there is a free 30-day trial, and to my knowledge it doesn't get deactivated when the 30 days is up. That does not mean that you should be using it after 30 days, but I will say if you're using it for something that's making you or somebody else money, please do the right thing and pay them for it. $99 on top of a job that you're doing for somebody is not a big expense. So work that in and get the developers paid so they can continue to make better products, or take this great product and make it even better for that matter. I will note the wife is doing laundry right now, so you might be able to hear my laundry machine in the background. I apologize, but I did promise to get these videos out, so I got to work with what I got to work with. I also have kids and dogs upstairs, not asleep. So, again, apology if you hear them. So, I did some looking into Redactor. And before we go into the guts of it, let's just talk about how to get it. Simply go to, let's see, what was it? imperavi.com/redactor, and you can click on Get Redactor here. Scroll on down past the paid versions and click on 30-day trial. You can download it and take the source files and put them wherever your web project is. Now let's take a look at what we have once you've downloaded it. As for the last video, I had separated the files up a little bit. I had the actual source for Redactor in one folder and the examples in another. That was just for my own doing, to keep things kind of separate. So again, let's review really quick. The Redactor CSS, Redactor JavaScript file are the most important here. We can use the minified file later. If we don't make any changes to redactor.js, we can then swap it out with minified the version and speed up the load time of the site a little bit better. If we do, however, change anything in redactor.js, then we would want to minify that at a later time before going to production. So with that said, let's take a look at some of the examples. And the easiest example, and the example we're going to use, is this post.html. Now, I made a couple of adjustments, but they're not going to be a big deal because we're going to completely strip this out anyways. The main thing to think about is that we do have a link to the jQuery source, which I'll explain that in a second. We have a link to Redactor's CSS. We have a link to CSS regarding any changes to the particular style. Pretty much a customization, which is, neither here nor there. You don't need to use that necessarily. And then we have the actual Redactor minified source. Okay, now I'll say that's most important because we need all the pieces and parts together. Now, what comes next is we need to tell Redactor what on the page is going to have that Redactor interface. And in more times than not, it's going to be a text area. And as I mentioned in the last video, it's as simple as this. Now, ignore this jQuery and JavaScript that may not, it's kind of Greek to you, unless you're Greek. But just like in CSS, to identify or an ID, we use the #. So what this is saying is find an element on the page with an ID called redactor_content. Now this could be whatever you want to call it. You could call it bunny rabbits, I don't care. That doesn't matter as long as the ID right here fits the ID in the text area, redactor content. And then this period followed by the redactor function, which should be a little familiar from PHP. A lot of JavaScript and jQuery follows some of the same syntax. A little bit, some of it doesn't, but you can kind of read it here. This is saying, okay, apply the redactor interface to that. So essentially you could have multiple redactor interfaces attached to multiple text areas. And that's important to note too. So I'm going to close this. And we're going to do a little maintenance here. I want to clean up some of our files here. Let's go ahead, and some people may do this differently. Sometimes people like to folder things out, for lack of better terms. But with JavaScript, unless you're using just a slew of JavaScript, I like to keep the source files all in one folder, just straight off the JS folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take redactor.js and move it into the JS folder. Click don't scan. And then I'm going to take redactor CSS and move it into our CSS folder. Again, don't scan. Now, for you, it may behoove you to just make copies of them instead, just in case you want to keep everything intact. So now we have our JS folder with redactor in it, CSS folder with the redactor CSS. Now let's open a couple of documents. We're going to open up our index, and again we're working the admin folder just in case that wasn't clear. So we have our really simple index.php laid out here. Let's go ahead and look at the example post.html, and we're going to take some pieces and parts from this. We're going to take this right here, which I need you to copy this from me because the one that was in this actual folder was referring to a local version of jQuery, which we do not have a local version. What we're doing here is actually taking the most recent version from jQuery.com and referencing that remotely. So make sure I'm going to copy this, and we're going to go into our head here, and on line 15 we're going to paste. So if you need to pause and write this down, please do, because this is more important than anything. Without the jQuery library, none of this will work. And just sidebar here, that is why TinyMCE was so robust. It had its own library, its own guts that needed to be loaded. jQuery was a little more secondary. In this case, jQuery does most of the heavy lifting. Redactor was built around jQuery. And because there's so many things built around jQuery now, we only have to load one library, and that makes things so much nicer. So let's look back to post here. What else do we need? We need the CSS document. So let's go ahead and copy this. And we'll paste that below. We'll change it so that it's looking for CSS/redactor.css. Go ahead and save this just because you should. Go back to post. Now we also need the redactor script. Copy. Paste that below. Now let's make some adjustments here. We're not using the minified version, so take that .min off. And we're not referencing redactor/redactor, we're referencing JS/redactor. So those are now incorporated here. And we can do a little test really quick before we move forward. We can split the code and come over here and click on each one of these and make sure they show up. If they show up, then we did our job right, which they have. So that means that these are pointing to the right location. Go ahead and turn off the split code. Head back over to post. Now here is another important part of the puzzle here. Let's copy this whole block here from 16 to 23. And we'll paste that directly below this. Now this is just my habit. I like to tab that out. Now when we look at this, there's a lot of familiarity with PHP. JavaScript uses a little bastardization of dot syntax, where you'll see a lot of these something dot something, and sometimes it can go on forever, dot something dot something dot something. So it's a little different than the way PHP works, but a lot of the fundamentals are the same. For instance, function here, if we were to move this, this might look a little more familiar. Function, parameters, which is empty at the moment, curly brackets, do something in the function. And in layman's terms, when you have a function like this without a function name, it basically means just do it now, rather than you're defining a function you want to use later. And the rest of this, we're saying document, when it's ready, then do this. So once the document's ready to go, loaded, ready to go, run this function, which this function is going to find redactor underscore content, whatever has that ID, and then apply the redactor interface to it. Now we don't have anything now with redactor underscore content. In fact, we don't even want to use that because that's their stuff. So let's make up something for ourselves. Let's just call this page underscore body. So now we're referencing an element on the page that's called, or has an ID, page body. And the only thing left to do, hopefully, because I'm looking at this for the first time too, so hopefully we didn't mess anything up. But the only thing we need to do now is open our content folder, find the document where we have all the form for the page and everything that handles that, and give a text area that ID. So let's go over to content, open up pages, scroll down past our PHP and MySQL, and let's find that text area, body, that's where it's at. So all we need to do is give it ID equals page underscore body. And now we save that and upload it. We save this and upload it. And then we need to make sure that we have everything else. So we need let's just go ahead and upload the CSS folder, and then let's upload the redactor.js. So right click, put, and then let's go take a look at our browser. This here is from the example.post.html. This is what it should look like if everything works. We should get this text area with this nice sleek interface, simple, and then be able to send it. This right here, jquery.com/download, this is where you can actually get that script that I pulled off. Just so you know. You can also use Microsoft's hosted version. Either one's great. But let's pull up our page. So, crossing our fingers, we're at the admin page. We're going to click on Pages. Click on one of the pages, Blog, and there you have it. We've included our WYSIWYG. Now we have to do a couple things to fix this here. Our footer's getting hung over. But now I want to explain what is actually going on here for those that don't get what's going on. What a WYSIWYG does is allow for you to add content in a more familiar way, not only for yourself but for your clients, to be able to put things in like making a certain portion bold, and then maybe let's make the rest of this italic, and then maybe we can take this and we can indent it. So we're giving some form to the page where many times you would have to expect that your client or yourself would have to know HTML or even want to do HTML in here. But that kind of defeats the purpose of a CMS. So that's no good. But what's really happening behind the scenes here? This, what we're seeing visually, is not sent to the database. That's important to note. What is actually being sent to the database is what's going on behind the scenes with this WYSIWYG. If we switch to the HTML view, we now see that they've added some tags, some paragraph tags, the italic tag, the block quote tag, which would then simply indent, and things of that nature. Now there's some other items in here like insert image, where you can put in a web link to an image, and we'll try that out here. I'm just going to go to our web page. I'm going to right click on this logo here and copy the image URL. Go ahead and paste it here. Say insert. Actually, I think I needed to do that not in HTML view. Let's try that again. Paste, insert. There you go. There it is. Now it's hiding, which, there you go. Somehow it got mixed in with the code here. So we'll set it to position left. There we go. Now the word wrap is around it. As you can see, there's definitely some room to mess with this and get used to the interface, which I'll be doing over time. Another thing important to notice is you can make a link. So we want to make this a whole link. Insert link. And we can give it some text. And we can say open a new tab, which, just so you know, most people, if you're not interlinking between the site, if you're not going to another page on the site, open a new tab is a really good idea. That way, when the user closes the website you send them to, your website still sits there. So we can say insert, and now that is a link. Now I see what I did here. When I highlighted that, it actually, the text was going to be what the text of the link was, so I made that mistake. That's why a lot of text disappeared. So keep that in mind too. Now the rest of this, so we just insert a table, use the default, type some stuff in here. And then you can take advantage of some of the other options here that we've already looked at. We can highlight videos.thedigitalcraft.com, make a link, say insert link, change it to email, and we can say we want to email. I'm just going to copy this, paste that, insert, boom, now we have a link to email. Then we can also take this, make a link, and HTTP www.paste, the digital craft, insert, there you go. So this is an example how you can take advantage of the WYSIWYG. And again, like I said, there's some things to learn. And I imagine there's probably some more customization you can do here. But either way, look at how slick this is. This would have taken us probably 3 videos, if not more, to use TinyMCE. So I'm glad we've decided to use this. Hopefully there's no pitfalls with the licensing, but it gives you a good idea. So now what we do is when we hit Save Changes, it gets saved, and then we can go back to the home page, and there you go. Now we may need to do some formatting. You can see the table happened. You can see all the slash through, the image showed up. Now it's not going to look the same as it does here because everything's smushed together and condensed, which is something you might want to keep in mind. If you have a area on your page, the body say is 700 pixels, you might actually think about making this WYSIWYG here, which is as easy as, make it 700 pixels wide, which is as easy as changing the HTML. Now, one thing I want to note before we end this video is that we need to drop this footer down. And if we open up styles, we're going to create a style that I use a lot. And I'm going to create it towards the top here under body. And I'm just going to call it clear. And I'm going to give it a property of clear and a value of both. And in layman's terms, here, well, I'll put it in first, and then I'll explain what it does, or at least the best explanation of what it does. Right here after footer, I'm going to put in a div, and some people do this a different way, but this is just the way I do it. I saw somebody else do it, and I started doing it. I liked it. So we make this empty div, give it a class of clear, and basically what it does is say anything floating or hanging over from any element above, be it the content, the main nav, the header, whatever, pass it, stop it, and then do the footer. And that's how we will eliminate this whole footer hanging here underneath the WYSIWYG. So if we save this, there you have it. Now our footer is down at the bottom. So hopefully this gets people more excited about what we were doing, and this gets the ball rolling on finishing up the CMS, because this was a thorn in the side. I did not know where to go with this. I was too worried about introducing TinyMCE and getting everybody just flustered. So hopefully this shows that this is a really, really, really good implementation. So before I end, again, you can get Redactor at imperavi/redactor or .com/redactor. I will note that when I was looking at the licenses again, in order for us to do Atom, we're going to need the OEM license, which I'll show you here is actually $399. So we may do some, we were already planning on it, but we may have to do some fundraising to get the Atom project in full effect. And for those who don't remember, the Atom project is, even though we're using the Atom name for this, This is more of a preliminary to get everybody on the same base, or same place, and same understanding on what a CMS is, how we're going to go about it, just in the basic form. And then the Atom project is going to be something way bigger, very hands-on, very interactive with everybody. We're going to build a CMS together with the benefit of everybody building it together and understanding it, rather than releasing a CMS from the digital craft that you have to go through and learn and understand without our help. So we're going to eliminate a lot of things there, and hopefully do something new, something people haven't done yet, and kind of backing that whole open source education thing, open source knowledge thing that we're doing here. So thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for your patience and waiting. More videos coming.